Okay, by this point in the course, we've already created an NFT token and it's inside our metaverse. It's that big square that's right in the middle of our metaverse. The other ones are not NFTs, but that one is our NFT token. Now, that NFT token cost us. We actually had to pay for that, and we have to keep that into consideration as we keep working with our test metaverse. If we pop open our metaverse, let's just take a look at that cost, and what we find is that our balance has dropped. It actually has dropped by 1, and that's because we paid 1 Matic, or what would have been the equivalent of 1 Ether. But because these faucets have so little amount they give you for free, you only get 1 Matic per day. If we pay 1 full Ether every single time, why don't we just change the code? And instead of actually paying 1 Ether for every single NFT, let's just set it for 0 just for our testing right now. Later in the course, we will actually change it. We'll actually increase other amounts, but at this moment, just to actually make sure that we can do these test environments, let's just set it to 0 so that we can actually do this, okay? So what we're gonna do now is that we're actually gonna deploy this contract again that actually changes that value right there. So now you're gonna learn what's gonna happen if we deploy the smart contract again. So we're gonna compile this contract again with that change to 0 Ether. Once it's compiled, we're gonna deploy it, and we're going to deploy it inside the correct wallet because we're actually doing it on Matic for the Polygon test network. We deploy it, we move inside, and let's wait. We're actually having to pay a minimal amount. And here we go. We've actually been successfully deployed this smart contract. And now we're going to be able to work with that smart contract. Now, first thing we need to do is we need to copy this address. We go over to web3.js, we replace this address here. Okay, we change the comments and we go back to the metaverse.sol. Let's get rid of that comment too. And all we got right now is the correct smart contract. This is a new address. However, we still need to change the ABI. So this ABI.json file, we have to change this. What we do is we go back to Remix, we go to the compilation, and here we choose the correct page. And once we got the right smart contract, we select the ABI, we copy this, and we go back to Visual Studio, we go to ABI.json, and we replace that code with the new ABI. So now we've replaced the smart contract address, we've replaced the ABI, we save both, and now we're gonna go to the metaverse. And notice that the big NFT no longer is there. And that's because we've actually replaced the smart contract. And if you look, the supply of NFT tokens is 0. That's because we're in a new smart contract. We started from scratch. Now, if we actually want to create a new NFT, we have to go back to Remix. All we have to do is we go to the smart contract, we're going to mint a new one. So we will call it My NFT. We want to use the same. Let's put the same dimensions, the same location. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually run that. Now notice, we're not going to have to pay 1 Ether or 1 Matic because we're doing it for free. All we're having to pay now is just the gas fee, which is very minimal, okay? So right now we can create as many NFTs as we want. Okay, let's take a look now in the browser. Now, what you'll notice right now is that we're waiting for this metaverse, and in order for us to be able to see this, we need to actually refresh this browser page. And when we refresh, here's our NFT. And you see right here, the current supply of NFT tokens is 1. Here's our building, My NFT, and we were able to create that NFT by paying 0. But then the question is, do we need to go to Remix every time we want to create a new NFT? Is that absolutely necessary? No. What we're going to do now is we are actually going to modify the interface that will allow us to generate these NFTs directly from the metaverse. That is, we're going to go from the browser. Inside the browser, we're going to have a button and some fields that will enable us to be able to create new NFTs instead of using Remix. So all that we need to do then is we need to go to Visual Studio, and we're going to close all these windows, and we're going to open index.html, okay? And now we're going to have a lot of fun because we're actually going to get into HTML and we're going to use our best HTML skills. But the best part is that you don't really need to know that much. In fact, there's actually a shortcut, and we're giving you a link to that shortcut in the Resources tab. It's actually a library called Bootstrap. Bootstrap enables us to do all of this built into Bootstrap. It's actually very easy to use. So if you go to that link in the Resources tab, you'll be taken here. From here, you'll be able to find this section here. You're going to copy this, and once you have this information, you're actually going to go to the Visual Studio, go back to index.html, and in here below the title, we're going to paste that. Okay, now let's go to format document so it looks clearly, and that's what we've got. It's already inserted into index.html and it makes reference to Bootstrap. Let's put it in practice and let's see how we can create a form. What we want is create a form with fields where people will be able to access this form and be able to create NFTs using this form. This form field with a button will all be inside the metaverse, and we're all doing it from Bootstrap, okay? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to find a form that actually fits the metaverse. In fact, we've already chosen one before we began writing this course, and we're going to look through these, but we're going to choose one that's going to fit just right. You're free to use whatever you want. We've chosen ours. So as we look through all these options, we'll be able to use one that fits well. But you've got all these form controls and you have the choice to modify whichever way you want, okay? So as we move, I'm going to select here the one, I think this one's fine. So, okay, perfect. So let's use, I think the best one we need to do is right here. All we got to do is let's move to this section down here and let's make some space below the script. And we're going to create a form, okay? Now, this form will have an on submit, and then what it will return for us is it will return false. Now, it might not make sense to you, but it actually makes perfect sense once you understand what it's all about, okay? So we do form on submit, return false, and now what we're going to do is we're going to set a base, okay? So we put a div, we put a class, and visually, this is going to help us have an attractive form that they can interact with it, okay? So the div class is going to be a row, G3. Then from here, we're going to create all the fields that are going to be needed. So we have the height, we have the width, we have the depth, everything that we're going to need, the coordinates, everything that's needed for our NFT. All of these are going to be entry fields, okay? This is where we're going to put all of our fields. So let's start doing that. So we're going to create a div. That div is going to have a class. That class is taken from Bootstrap. Now, we've selected a Bootstrap class, which is call-sm, okay? So in there, we're going to put a label. So this label is going to let us know which is the field that we're going to be displaying. So we have a form label, and the label, we're going to call it NFT name, because we first need to know what's going to be the name of the NFT we're creating, okay? And then we need to put that input field. Well, first, let's take a look to see how this looks. So if we go to our metaverse and we actually, there, now we see we have the NFT name. It's already appearing on the page, okay? Got it. So let's go back to the Visual Studio so we can actually get it better. Okay, so if we go back here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the input, and this input's going to be a class where people will be able to enter their information, whatever the name is for this case, right? So if we're doing the NFT name, this is where people will be able to input the NFT name. And we know that the type is going to be a text, okay? Now, whatever people put in here is going to be a text, and we need to have an identifier. This identifier is going to let us then take this value to the smart contract that we're going to send Fade. But right now, let's set a name for that, and the ID is going to be NFT name. This is going to be a required field because we want to make sure that the user places the NFT name before they do anything else, okay? We're going to hit save, and once we have it saved, let's take a look in the metaverse. And what we have here, we've got the NFT name, and underneath, we've got a field, and we can actually fill in that information. Okay, let's go back, and by this point, we have the foundation. We already have the first field. This field lets us capture the NFT name. So we're going to use this, and to make things easier, why don't we just copy it and paste it several times more, and then we can modify it so we can modify it as we need it. So beyond the name, we want to get the width. So we've got that. Let's change here. The value is going to be NFT width. That's the ID for this value, okay? Let's see what it looks. There it is, NFT width. So now it's putting them one next to each other. We try the next one. So we got width. The next one's going to be height. So we label it as height. Then once we get the name, the label, we change it to height, but we change the ID also. So it's NFT height. And by this point, we've got the name, the width, and the height. If we look, all of it appears in the browser. Let's go to the next one. From here, we're going to go to a different column. Notice right here, we've got the row. This first div is a row. The next ones are columns, okay? So once we've got that, we go to the next one, we see that we've got the depth. So by this point, we've got NFT depth. We're going to change now the ID, so it's NFT depth. And notice how easy it is to do all this work. We're just copying and pasting it, and reusing it. It's just a lot more efficient. Now we're going to go to the coordinates, okay? So if we go to the X position, from the X position, we're going to change here NFT, and we're going to call it X. And then from here, we first did the X. Now we're going to do Y, and NFT Y. Let's go to the next one, and this is going to be Z. So once we got Z, now we go to NFT Z. Okay, at this point, we have to make a modification. Notice that the first label is text. That's because the NFT name is a text. But the other fields need to be numbers. That's because the width, the height, the depth, the positions, they all need to be numbers. How can we modify this so that people do not put text inside the numbers area, right? We need exclusively numbers, not letters. Okay, how can we do that? There's actually a really easy way to do that. So if we hit save, all of the positions are here. The way we fix that is we change the type from text, we change it to number. It's that easy. So we're going to copy and we're going to paste it, replacing all these texts with number. So now instead of actually having numbers entered to the positions or the height or the width, now exclusively people will be able to put numbers. So even if people try to put letters, it doesn't let you. It just lets you put numbers, which is exactly what we want. Now we need to put a button here. The button will equivalently of that transact that we have in Remix. So we need to add that button. How do we do that? We do that with Bootstrap. It's actually available really, really easy. There's a section in Bootstrap. Let's look for a button. Here are buttons, and we get to choose whichever button we want. We can choose whichever one you want. There's a lot of examples, but we have one that we've chosen, and we're actually going to use this one right here. All we really need to do is we're going to create button, and then we set an ID. The ID is going to identify what that button does. The function is going to be called mint. And the type of that button is going to be a submit button, okay? Now we need to specify the class. And that class we're going to get from Bootstrap. If we go down here, you're going to see it right here. Button primary, we copy that. We go back to our source code. We insert that in there. And we're going to close the button right here, okay? Now we need to specify the button. We need to put create a new NFT. Okay, that's the name of the button right here. Okay, so once we've got that, we hit save, and let's take a look in our browser. So here it is. We've got the button right here. And if we look at it, we have the opportunity to create an NFT. Now notice we need a required field, so let's start creating this. Let's call this my name. Then we set the width, the height, the depth, the position, X, Y, Z, and let's see what happens when we create a new NFT. Okay, so it's going to run the smart contract, but first let's inspect so we take a look at what happens at the console. And let's go back to the source code so you get some of the details. So remember that on submit return false that we set up? We did that intentionally because if we didn't have that there, what's going to happen is this. Let's see, we just removed it. If we actually create a new NFT here, notice all the information inside the console. The information in the console is there. If I hit create a new NFT, all that info disappears. We want to keep it there. So we really want to put that on submit return false so that the information does not disappear. Now notice what happens. If we put in the information for this specific NFT, when we create a new NFT, it doesn't disappear. It's still in there, okay? So at this point, we created the graphical interface for us to create the NFTs. Now what we need to do is connect this interface with a smart contract using Web3.